Equinox Solid, brand new storm ball, and I think a question that a lot of people are going to have when they see this one announced is how does it compare to the Iron Max? Lane 1, we have a medium pattern, a little bit burned up. I practiced for about 45 minutes on it. Probably not the ideal condition for either the Equinox Solid or the Iron Max, but I think this will give you a pretty good idea of the difference. Alright, so that's the Equinox Solid. Again, medium pattern, a little bit burned up. Big strong balls in this ball center when the lanes are a little bit burned up aren't the greatest, so I'm not expecting them to look great on lane 1, but we'll go over on lane 2 in a couple minutes and you'll see them there. But let's throw the Iron Max, try to throw it as close to the same. Obviously, first thing I notice is these balls are in the same category. Like they're both strong, asymmetrical, solid balls, dull colors. They hook early. They're strong. Like they're in the same category. So they're not going to be night and day different. It's not like I'm throwing a Tropical Surge and an Iron Max. They are going to be fairly similar. So we're talking small, but probably also significant differences here. So now we see a pretty significant difference. So I put the Iron Max on the spinner, got the surface down, got the shine off of it. They should be very similar in surfaces now. Here, what I'm seeing is that the Iron Max is rolling out a little bit more than the Equinox Solid. The Equinox Solid comes back a little bit harder, goes through the pins a little more flush, where both shots, the Iron Max, one shot it flat 10s, the other shot it chops out the 10. So that's telling me that it's rolling out a little bit more, losing a little more energy. So what I'm seeing is lengthwise, I feel like these two balls are fairly close. Layout on them, just by the way, pretty much exactly the same. 5 1/4 pin under. The PSA is very similar positions, so layouts shouldn't do a huge difference here. But I'm definitely seeing the Iron Max seems to be maybe a pinch earlier, but very similar lengthwise. So there's not a ton of difference there. What I'm also seeing is the Iron Max being a little bit rounder. It looks like that might be a little bit slower response time, meaning that when it sees friction and starts making a move, it makes it move over a longer period of time, meaning that a lot of times it's going to be a little bit smoother, it's going to be more round, it's going to continue a little bit more. Where the Equinox Solid makes a more significant move when it sees the friction, but it also does seem like it is a little higher response, meaning that it makes a more significant move, a quicker move, a stronger move when it gets to the back end, but it also has a tendency to stop a little bit more, like hook stop a little bit more if there's a little too much friction. And I was really seeing that when I played a little bit further right on this pattern, where the Iron Max would kind of be smooth and roll off of the friction, where the Equinox Solid had a tendency to kind of stop and roll out more when I played more into friction. As I move further left, they kind of switch, and now the Iron Max is actually rolling out more because that one's a little bit slower, a little bit smoother. I think in my ball review, please go watch that if you haven't, I said that I felt like the Equinox Solid might actually be a little bit stronger and out-hook the Iron Max a little bit more, and I think that's still true, just simply because it's a little more responsive, so it will change direction a little bit harder, but the Iron Max might be the more continuous of the two balls. Two pretty different motions in somewhat similar balls, and not a bad thing to have two balls that hook that early as these two do, that have kind of different motions, because that's going to help you out when you're bowling on something that's pretty tight or long patterns. Just for fun, throw one further right. You can really see there that when I move right, the Equinox Solid wants to kind of stand up and go forward more. That's telling me it is more responsive because it uses its energy in a shorter window and then goes forward when there's too much friction for it. On a pattern where it's clean enough, where there's enough oil and less friction, where it can actually get down lane and save energy, it might actually be sharper and more continuous than the Iron Max. But on this, when there's a lot of friction, and I try to play straight with it, does have a tendency to kind of stand up and want to go forward. And right now I expect the Iron Max to actually look better from this spot. Oh, trip point. No. Yeah, and I think that was pretty accurate. The Iron Max seemed like it hooked just a little bit sooner and didn't stop hooking as much as the Equinox Solid did, just simply because it's a little bit rounder, so it rounds out on the friction rather than hooks and then goes a little more forward. So so I would say on the straighter angles, the Iron Max is probably better, but when you start moving left and opening up the angles, you probably want to get into the Equinox Solid cuts. It's going to have that a little bit more responsiveness. But either way, this isn't the optimal condition for him, so let's go over on lane 2. The pattern over there is same pattern, just pretty much fresh. I've only thrown a couple shots on lane 2, so we should get quite a different picture over there. Start out, throw the Iron Max first here. So a little right, you can really tell the Iron Max picks up early. Definitely not as soon as over on line 1, but picks up early, and it's very, very smooth. Burns up a lot of energy early on there. So Equinox Solid, let's see what that does on a similar shot. Yeah. All right, so pretty much the same. But again, I do see the Iron Max being a little bit earlier and just kind of being super, super smooth, which is why it doesn't get back to the pocket, where the Equinox Solid kind of hooks and then tumbles, which is why that one doesn't get back to the pocket. So similar result, a little bit different way of getting there. Let's move a little further left into a little bit more oil, and we'll see how they start looking. Equinox Solid up first. Yeah, you can definitely tell this lane is much fresher. Probably the first couple shots I'm playing a little too straight, a little too close to the friction here. Move in about 5 boards, get a little bit more oil, get it to go down the lane a lot easier. So again, very smooth motion. Even though this pattern is a little bit fresher, I would still say these balls are still a little too early here, burning up a little bit too much. So still not an ideal condition, but it is a very high friction bowling center disc, so I need to put a ton of oil on the lane for these to be too long or too clean. Comparing these two balls, like the Iron Max is probably the strongest ball on the market, and the Equinox Solid is very close. You might want to have both because they are kind of different. I can really see that on a day where the Iron Max just won't go through the pins, the Equinox Solid might be perfect, and vice versa. So definitely not copies of them, of each other, but similar similar strengths and in a similar spot in my arsenal. I'm pretty convinced here with seeing them on both of these lanes and on very similar surfaces that the Iron Max is maybe a pinch earlier than the Equinox Solid and much rounder. So it's not necessarily smoother, but it makes its motion in a longer window and in a more rounded shape, rounded continuous shape, where I would say the Equinox Solid makes a little bit of a stronger, more responsive move. Not high response time by any means, but more responsive than the Iron Max. So it's either going to be a little more angular, which is going to allow you to create a little more angle, or it's going to tell you pretty easily, hey, Equinox Solid is too strong right now, because it's going to hook and stop and kind of roll out. So I don't mind those balls where it's pretty easy to tell whether it's good or not. There we go. When I started throwing the Equinox Solid, this was kind of one of my thoughts. How does this compare to the Iron Max? Because the Iron Max is pretty much my go-to strong ball, and I think we got a pretty clear picture here that the Equinox Solid is a little more responsive, meaning it's gonna perform a little bit better. For me, it's gonna perform a little bit better when I move further left. I can see for some players with specific releases that would probably say have it the other way around, where because they can get the Equinox Solid to stop and tumble more than they are able to with the Iron Max, that they might actually have the Iron Max being better from further left because they can get it to continue more. I think if you have a super high rev rate, or if you're really up the back of it, maybe like really up the back of it, kind of hard with your release, so you have a tendency to get your ball to stop, like hook stop a little bit. I can see it being the other way around, where you might feel like the Equinox Solid is better at playing straight than the Iron Max. But I'd say for me, and if you have a tendency for your hand to get a little bit around the ball, I think you're going to see the Equinox Solid being better when you move further left, create more angle, where the Iron Max is better playing a little bit straighter, maybe even on the same pattern. So it might be something where if you want to play, if you're balling on, let's say, 45 feet and you want to play straight up second arrow, you go with the Iron Max. If you want to play third or fourth arrow and kind of slow wheel it a little bit more, you go with the Equinox Solid. Both of them are going to pick up in the oil, but I feel like it's from a little bit further or a little bit different spots on the lane. So, Equinox Solid versus Iron Max. I like both of them. I feel like there's room for both in your arsenal. There are some differences, but they're also two super strong balls. So Iron Max definitely has a rival here. So hope this answered some of your questions about Equinox Solid versus the Iron Max. Which one's stronger, which one does what. And if you haven't, please go watch my ball review, my first impression ball review of the Equinox Solid. I did that a few days ago, right after I drilled it. So please go watch that one, and I'll see you in some more videos. Yeah, enjoy.